Okay. We're live. Hello, everyone in TV land. My name's Noel. So I'm going to start today. I like starting with just a little bit of silence, and then there will be some talking, and then we can get to an attempt to answer any questions that come up. What I'll do is I'll put, there's a link that we'll post here. I'm going to ask me a question live. Then you can click on that and we'll see you side stage. You can close your eyes if you want, you don't have to. So all there is this happening right now. It's all there will ever be. It's all that there ever has been. Every moment, every event has always happened right now in this space of being and what is. So simple and so beautiful, and we get to live life. We get to be this character. I get to be this character of Noel. I find it absolutely just utterly fascinating and beautiful, and the simplicity of it ends up making it more and more beautiful. And when the mind hears this, or thoughts arise, I use mind, thoughts, ego, me, whatever you want to call it. There's no real preference, although sometimes I guess we use the word mind. Hears that this is all there is. Immediately, thoughts may come up. Well, what do you mean? This isn't enough. This can't be enough. This can't be all there is. Or that sounds awful. That sounds nihilistic. You know, it sounds like you're saying that nothing matters. And in a strange and funny sense, it's true that nothing matters except to the separate me, except to the mind, believing that it's separate, believing that it should be doing something, that it should be something other than what it is. And it's just simply not the case. And yet we're absolutely free to feel those points of resistance. We're free to battle and try to use logic to figure out what is being said here, what is being said by other speakers that are talking about this, attempts made to triangulate what this person said versus another person said. They said it differently. Maybe we'll be able to figure out through the definition of these logical gaps in the words that are being spoken, the truth that's being spoken. But all the words are wrong because they're words. They hold a dualistic imperative to speaking and writing. And that's not a problem. Every action that's taken, every event that happens is as intended. And I have to be careful. I don't have to be careful, but I am careful when I say as intended, because that can be an opportunity for the mind to say, well, what was the intention? What was the meaning behind this? a loving mother who used to always say, you know, everything happens for a reason. And uh, it was a nice way to feel better about something that didn't turn out the way that was expected. But I just say everything happens because it does. Everything happens for is food for the mind. Hey, Kind Freedom. Yeah, go ahead and submit a question. You can submit a question into chat or click on the video and ask it either way. But everything happens for a reason and is more fodder for the mind to chew on. Well, what's the reason? You know, what's the reason that this particular thing happened and this other thing didn't happen? Everything happens because it does. And every action that you take is the right action. It's that then thoughts arise, the mind arises and says, no, it should be another way. It should have been another way. And it's okay that the thoughts arise. It's okay that those things pop up. It's really not the thoughts arising. It's the belief in them. The belief that this thought arising is a good thought, and I should try to have more of that thought. And that thought is a bad thought, and I should try to have less of those particular thoughts. They're all on the same side of the table in terms of their uselessness. They are, though. They are so useless. They're worthless. They're just arising. We're not in control of them. You don't have to believe what's being said here. Just look. Find the source of those thoughts. Try to have only good thoughts. So I was laughing earlier because I started making videos because I didn't have anyone to talk to about this. I found this thing called non-duality. You know, some people like that word, and some people would rather not use it. I don't care. It's useful as a category, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, so I started making videos, and then that led me to meeting some other wonderful people and starting this Nothing project that then started consuming some time, and so I had less time to talk to and about this, even though I love this topic. And now here I am on video answering questions that are sent to me, that have been sent to me, because the questions that come, there is an interest, I guess if you would call it that. There's a feeling of wanting to be of assistance, of wanting to help, of wanting to root for people, root for apparent people in their pursuit of peace. Peace is here. It's always here. I can't remember what that we titled this. Never, always, or always, ever this. ever only this. Sorry, I can't remember. But that's the truth. It's always just this, all the time. And it's full acceptance of everything, of the good, the bad, the ugly. And there's constant tripping over words in trying to talk about this. But the words that always come up are gratitude and love. Gratitude for being able to just witness and be this, play this character, and play this character with all of the scars, all the joy, everything is allowed because it can't not be. Everything happens because it does. doesn't make it any easier when something doesn't go as intended. We want something. There's a desire. There's an expectation, which is just another thought arising, wanting something to be a specific way. And so there can be an attempt to use logic of, well, it happened this way because these other things happened. And then you just sort of go down those rabbit holes. Or I would argue it's not a better way, but let's use better. In a better way, logic wins the day. And there's an acceptance of some sort of outcome. And then the mind says, yeah, but it's its logical chain to the next thing. It's in agreement, but more questions. And it will do this. It's been doing this. It's very good at what it does. It will say, if X, Y, and Z happens, then I'll find peace. Then I'll find happiness. And those of us unfortunate enough to have found this, to have found non-duality, can sometimes get a feeling that, oh well, I'm not tricked by the mind through the pursuit of stuff and events and all those external things. But now what I'm chasing, now I'll feel better once I figure out what's being said. Once I figure out what's being written about. So books are read. Hundreds of books were read here. Thousands of hours of videos, of audio. Please, just what is being said, frustration. And so I feel that. And I think that might be where this interest in assistance comes from. Gratitude for, we use the word understanding, but it's more instinctual than something that comes from logic or knowledge. Most of the questions I get are what I call yeah, but questions. And I don't know the answers. I'll read some and see what comes up, but I don't know anything. And I think that ends up being what makes all this even more beautiful, is that there used to be this interest or a need to figure this out. This needs to be worked out. And maybe I'm not trying hard enough to figure out this life thing. And now there's nothing to figure out. It just happens. Life happens. You can pretend you have control. You can pretend that you're making specific decisions. Chocolate over vanilla. This partner over that. This job over that. This object of affection in the form of a goodie. But it's all just happening. So I see some questions in the chat. Thank you for those. I'm going to read a couple that I had. This all sort of started because we had a slot available and people have been emailing some questions, so I picked out some. So, Henrique asked, sometimes the presence of a controversial guru is good. I don't have it because he or she gives us feedback based on their personal path and experience and acts like a pointer to the exit of the situation. Even if it's not a real exit, because in an apparent exit, at least it is better than staying stuck and without anything. May I have your commentary about the situation, please? With no judgment, I don't use the word guru, teacher, spiritual leader, any of those things. If that's, I say speaker and author. Because I feel like there's a hierarchy just even in that naming, and you could say, well, no, you're just getting caught up on labels, and that doesn't help. So I don't know if it helps or not. But back to what I said before, every next step is the right step. If there's a feeling of I should go speak to this person and I'm going to call them a guru and I'm going to trust the things that they're saying, I can't say that that's bad. I can't say that you shouldn't do that. But why would I? If that feeling is arising and there's a calling to do that, a speaker and author that I really just consistently enjoy is Nisargadatta Maharaj, and I'll read a quote. I have a quote from him that I'll read in a second, but he used the word guru. He said there was this man, I trusted him, and I just did everything he said, and these are the things that he said. He effectively outsourced his behaviors and the things that he was supposed to do through full trust to an other, till it was seen that there's no such thing as an other. And yet he can still, or he doesn't still, but he would still then speak of that person. I'm sorry, if you have the name, you can type it in the chat, but I can't remember his guru's name. So the answer to the question is if there's a feeling that going to that watching another video will help, and reading another book and going to a satsang will help, there's no suggestion here that shouldn't happen. In fact, the call off the search, that pointer, while I understand what's being pointed to, I also think that it's kind of a silly command or a silly pointer, because it's like telling people, if you want to lose weight, just stop eating so much. You're going to do whatever. So Brendan asks, how can this way of being and understanding? Brendan, I don't know, because any thought arising of, wow, this feels deeper, I'm understanding this more, is just a thought arising about it. So there would be no suggestion of activities that can or should take place to deepen an understanding, because it's not that that's the intention, but it's a loaded question, because you're trying to deepen the understanding in terms of logic. You're trying to ask the thief to solve their own crime, and you can just go round and round and round. All right, I'm going to jump to the chat questions here, because for showing up today. Thank you. This is from Kind Freedom. Hi, Noel. I recently realized that all thoughts are just thoughts, and personal stories are just chains of thoughts. Even the stories about me and my future are all just thoughts that arise. I understand intellectually that the separate self is an illusion, but the body still feels separate. This body still feels energetically separate. When I meditate, the body-mind can get completely still, and there's a deep stillness, but the body still feels energetically separate. I feel in limbo. I feel stuck in the middle of the paradox. I cannot go back to believing the fictional stories and thought patterns, but I don't know what to do. The body still feels separate. It still feels like I cannot do anything. I feel separate, but I cannot believe this mental story of separation. Mentally, I cannot believe I'm separate. Physically, I feel separate. Can you feel, okay, so that's a long one here. Can you speak about the energetic change that seemingly happens? People often say that the me feels contracted, and then there's an energetic change with the collapse of the me. I don't see anything wrong. Thank you for your question, kind freedom. But I don't see anything. What is the problem with the body feeling separate? The only issue, the only thing that takes issue with the body feeling separate is the mind. It says, well, okay, I've got this. I've got this intellectually. I'm not. This is kind of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, because it's just what the mind does. This is the but. So I get this intellectually. I get that I'm not a separate me, but I still feel. This still feels real, and it does. This feels real, but that doesn't make it bad or wrong or something to overcome or fix or move beyond. It's just the mind wanting. It's just the mind wanting to logically apply some other thing as a sticking point in its pursuit of continuation. What's wrong with the body still feeling separate? There's nothing wrong with feeling pain. There's nothing wrong with moving out of the way because a car is coming or a bus is coming at your head. I know there are other speakers who will do guided meditations, and they'll work with people to try to feel into their body. And I suppose if that's useful, then that can be pursued or listened to. But there's no interest or attempt here to not feel anything, to not feel pain, sorrow, joy, happiness, a good feeling in the body. Maybe it doesn't answer the question. I don't even know if I could, except to say that it's just the mind. You know, there's nothing that wants more to kill the ego than the ego. It wants more to eliminate the separate feeling that the body has than the ego. The body doesn't have a problem with this. The body's just doing what it does. We wake up, we walk down the hall, we brush our, and if we're mindful in that approach, then we're actively observing our teeth being brushed. And we're probably actually doing a better job brushing our teeth. But when we're not, I use teeth brushing a lot for some reason. I think that's because I have to convince my kids to do it multiple times a day. But when we don't remember doing that, when we just go, oh, I don't even remember brushing my teeth today, it's because the mind had other plans for attention. How's that for a non-answer? Question. Okay. So Andrew Hodges says, it feels so sticky. The stories loop over and over and over, apparently. I find release in listening. Me too, Andrew Hodges. Thank you for asking. I find release in listening as well. And one of the reasons that I stopped making the videos is that I just felt like making less noise and doing more listening. But I actually, the stickiness that's felt, and we just talked about it a little bit with the body, like if I'm talking to someone about this and I don't just go around and start conversations with it, because I don't really find it, I don't think that most people find it all that interesting, although I find it absolutely fascinating. But we'll get into a conversation and we'll just crack up. I'm like, this feels so real. When I had a dream the other night, it wasn't a fun dream, but it felt really real. It felt so real that I woke myself up swinging. That felt real, but it wasn't. And this feels real as well. And I don't see any problem with that. I have a friend that I have coffee with on a regular basis, and we've been talking about various things, and he has some this might be him, now that I think about it. That just asked the question. But we talk about various things, and for the most part, we talk about living with zero expectations, just like everything happening is happening, and that's great. But recently, there's been something that's come up in terms of relationship that it's clear and obvious to see patterns of behavior over time. And when you see those patterns of behavior, you can change or not change them. I told them you can pretend to decide to do things a different way, but there's no reason that because he knows what's going on around here, for lack of a better term, that stickiness shouldn't arise. That's just an expectation of a response to patterns that have shown up for a long time. Because, like, when you get angry, you get angry. People will say, you yell at your kids. I'm like, yeah, they do stuff that I don't want them to do sometimes. Yeah, they get yelled at, but what I don't end up doing, and which is totally allowed even if that happens, is to run around behind the scenes and be like, you're supposed to know better. You know what's going on. You shouldn't yell. You shouldn't get frustrated. That's bullshit. You can yell and get frustrated all you want. It just happens. And you can also run around behind the scenes and beat yourself up and pretend that you should know better and that it shouldn't happen again. And you can read books or read blogs or watch videos about that to try to change that behavior. Or you can just simply see that getting pissed happened, getting frustrated happened. That's it. It just does. I'm going to go back to the left side, we'll call it. Might be right on your screen. I have no idea. So Tim had a long question. I had to cut it down, but he said, when resting as I am happens here, to be honest, there is the sense of am or is, but not really any I that am or is. It's like there's a sense of being aware, and it seems to be subjective, but is it really? It feels like I is not really there. Like difference, basically the being in a body, 42 years of conditioning saying I am and I. There is just am. So then what? What am? What is it? Wow, so much I's and ams. What is it that is? It seems like just vast infinity that is aware, or vast nothing that is awake. So what is this I exactly? It's sort of presenting an obstacle to resting as I am. Tim, thank you for your question. The sense of being aware is just being aware, but the naming it, categorizing it, labeling it, speaking about it, thinking about it as such, that's the thoughts that are happening about it. And self-inquiry, Ramana Maharshi's, who am I, as a practice, as an approach, to do that, as a question that turns the mind in on itself. What is this I exactly? I don't know. I have no idea what it is exactly. I don't have an answer for that. Except that if you ask, if you say, what are the things that I absolutely know for sure? I could say, I say nothing. I say, I don't know anything absolutely for sure. And I actually love that about it. But you could say, I am. I know that I am. But this idea that the I is an obstacle preventing us from I am It could be said that that's just the belief in the thought that there is an obstacle preventing one from being in that understanding, that knowing of I am. I feel like I'm totally not answering any of these questions. Oh, keep them coming, though. Keep them coming. We'll do it. We're doing our best. Damn it. Hannibal asks, "How did you awaken?" No one awakens. There's no enlightened beings. The best description is that it becomes instinctually understood that there was no one in the first place. Haha, I saw numbers drop as soon as I said that. People wanting to hear. It's just the understanding that there was no one in the first place. There was no separate person that was looking for this, that was seeking this. So I could share the stories of reading books and listening and being frustrated and making deals with the self of just freaking relax. Everything works out. Trust that, yeah, it was yeah buts here as well. Okay, so I know that I'm not separate, but what is this that everyone's talking about? I don't get it on a specific level. But if you're asking for when the final thing just became, truly known, it wasn't really magical. It was not angels and trumpets, as they say. It was just this instinctive knowing that it's always been this. And then it was this sort of like, then there was laughter of, oh my gosh, it's always been this. There's been this hardcore seeking for a long time to try to figure out what it was, and it's sitting. I was looking over it to find it. And I've used there's a couple things like looking for your glasses and realizing that they're on your head, or waking up late for work in a panic and then realizing that it's Saturday, that you have the day off. But there wasn't a cause. There was that all that is just a story. It's just a story of this thing apparently happened, and then all of a sudden it was known. But no one awakens. It's just consciousness once again finding itself, or awareness, whatever you want to use. God, you can use whatever words you want. There's no preference. Nick Gavigan asks, "Hello, just spent the last hour watching other AA videos. Now that I'm here with you, great to see you live for once." Oh, thanks, Nick. That's so nice. I was getting, that's all worked out great. I'm glad we had a slot for this. Being a witness, thoughts come and go. What about words? Is the control and the awareness of whether or not a thought is pursued without attachment? Is there any level of control? That's actually a great question. That there's little sticking points, cause and effect. What's the word? I totally forgot. Oh, free will. But being a witness, thoughts come and go. What about words? Very similar, actually. In fact, some words appear to show up in patterns just as thoughts do. Words here oftentimes come from two pretty funny movies. I've just seen them a lot, and I think they're funny. It's Tommy Boy and and Dumb and Dumber, if you want to know. But there's a sense of control. Sometimes it feels like I just watched the Super Bowl and I wanted the team that didn't win to win. there was an interest to make them win. I wanted them to win, but I didn't. When it became clear it wasn't going to be the case, it was never in my control. But sometimes that's fun, figuring this all out. Like there's something to figure out. Sorry if this end up being these loaded words that make you feel like there is something to figure out. It doesn't mean that we walk around in the world saying this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. That doesn't become the new mantra. It doesn't become the new mantra for it's not an opt-out of living. It's not an escape, it's an invitation. So if Andrew Hodges, if the stickiness is arising in these particular, in these particular loops, and things are playing over and over and over again, that's okay. Like it's okay to feel separate. It's okay to get lost in the character of Noel. It happens. There's no interest or attempt to make it otherwise. There's no practice to change that. With regard to attachments, I don't know. I'll just speak here. They've by and large have disappeared. There are no real desires. There are attachments. There are seeming attachments in the form of kids and family members and wanting just love and wanting to express and share that and wanting people to feel good. So I suppose there's an attachment or maybe a desire there, but I'm trying to think of the last time that something happened that where there was a thing, where there was like well, maybe it was the freaking Super Bowl. Sorry, but I was like, oh, that's unfortunate, but I didn't throw anything at the television. I'm not even a huge sports fan. I just like that particular team. But if attachments arise, then those are great opportunities. Those sticking points, these points of resistance, attachments, they can serve as reminders to show up and see, and they can serve as reminders to just come back to this, come back to the space. You can, you're free to, but you don't need to figure out why they're happening, figure out how you can make less of them. But anytime any point of resistance comes up in the form of a thought or an interaction, there might be some stickiness there. Oh yeah. I love that. I love the pull. And it happens often. The pull, the remembering, I guess if you want to call it that. Like, wow, I really got caught up in the character there for a second. And I watch, well, if you watch any movie and it's considered good, you're tense with the characters, that you call that a good movie. You don't scold yourself and say, why? You should know better. This is a movie. You don't remind yourself the whole time you're watching it going, this is a movie. So, in fact, that's the most annoying person to watch a movie with. Oh, geez. Good movies are ones that feel real. The real feeling in the role and the role playing, the playing out that this character has. It's interesting. Why would there be any attempt to negate that or prove that it didn't exist? Sonia, thank you so much for the nice emojis. Ned Astrid, 123, Claude Felter. All right. Aren't stories it too? It feels like chasing the end of the rainbow can be fun, even though there isn't anything to get. Yes. That's a great point, because the stories are it as well. The thoughts are it as well. We can go round and round, and we can have these philosophical debates, which are frankly not interesting here at all. But when we're talking about this, then you can see sometimes people will shut down because you're like, the story, that's just a story, but the stories are it too. And they're like, you lost me. So yes, The stories are it as well. And actually sometimes that can be fun to see the stories that are believed. But that ends up just being like what I just said, like sort of the recognition or remembering that like the, oh yeah, this is where it is. Sonia, pure awareness or pure witness? Yeah. How about both to that? Witness is a little bit tricky though, because witnessing of what? Okay, what about words, Nick? Gavigan, what about words when having conversations? If things are just happening, does that include what is said to others, or is there some level of aware control? Appreciate any wisdom. I mean, you can pretend that you have control over what it is that you're saying. You can. You're more than welcome to do that. You can pretend that you're pausing before you're speaking to think about your words, before they come out. But those thoughts are just happening. The words are just happening. And if the argument of that was like, well, how are you mean you're not just running around the world going blah blah blah, not making any sense? But I guess some are. I guess I used to live in San Francisco, and there was a decent amount of that. But that wasn't in control either. And yet we think, well, I read books and I have regular conversations, so I'm in control and I'm aware of these particular this level of control. The feeling of control is just illusory. Let me put it that way. Hopefully that answers that a little bit better. You can pretend. There's this woman, I can't remember her name, Judy something on Twitter. She's really funny. She's a non-duality speaker. We should have her on. But I saw her post a long time ago. She posted a picture of those little supermarket, the supermarket carts, and it was a kid one, and it was the picture of the front of that cart, and it said, "That's right, sweetie, you're in charge here." Kids are cruising around and they're, "Hey, babe, move out of the way." They're cruising around and doing whatever they're doing. For kids, that's real. They feel as if they're in control. And that's okay. It's cute even. And so, Nick, those times when maybe I feel like I'm in control or should be, I can recognize those, hopefully in the moment, but sometimes later as acute, as cute, that for the short amount of time, whatever it was that actually felt like I was controlling things. No worries for the double question. Kind freedom, does this instinctive knowing come and go, or once it is seen, can it not be unseen? That's a common question, and that's a good one. As I was just saying, there is no interest in the pursuit of catatonic awareness, of sitting and that happens as well, I suppose. But there's a phrase for that called oscillation. So it's going back and forth, and some people they'll say, I had it and then I lost it. I had it and I lost it, and they'll say that as something that's frustrating or something that needs to be fixed. It seems that it seems to I use like a spiraling down. It seems that the thoughts that arise, they just get softer and softer. They're still allowed. We're not trying to do that. So this oscillation of back and forth of like playing the character of Noel, because Noel has to go to work and Noel has a family and Noel's doing these specific things and free to do that. But then without fail, there's always ends up being kind of this glass ceiling on that. And it's back to like, oh yeah. Yeah. I think I think it's great. But with the phrase, with the question, once it's seen, can it not be unseen? So what was just described as temporary, you can't unknow whatever this is. can't go back. And sometimes the mind here will even try it. It will say, man, things were really a lot more interesting when we got really excited about stuff and we got really bummed out about things. This middle way is super boring. So you can't, even though sometimes that was way more fun. I don't know, it was kind of fun too. I feel personally that it's not about getting lost. It's a feeling that all I know is being lost. Absolutely all blessed nonetheless. Feeling that I know is being lost. Yeah, I think that there could be some fear. The feeling that all I know is being lost. There can be a fear associated with that, especially this programming in the world is like, hey, we're better. It's better. You know, knowledge is power. Information is power, and the more that I consume, the more control I have, the better I can feel about how to navigate this world. And I've said before, this energetic feeling about this being about not addition, which that is, you know, more knowledge, more money, more information, more whatever. It's really about subtraction. So feeling is being lost. Yeah, that to me is freedom. All that I think that I know is lost means I can just approach everything with a freshness and without expectations that I should be able to do this or do that. That is that subtraction and not addition of subtraction. Less in that regard. I don't know anything. It's the best. It's the best to not know anything. Okay. Let's see. I feel relaxed when you talk about how everything is allowed. Can you talk more about that? Yeah. So there's different words that people use. They'll talk about surrender or allowing or welcoming. Just choose whatever. Choose whatever feel. But all is allowed is there is a seeming number of questions that are coming from places of suffering. And so there is this interest in escaping from suffering. So there's running away from, oh, if I figure this out, then I will, then I won't have this suffering anymore. And so it's not a running for the hills. It's actually a turning around and facing it, chest out, saying, what do you got? What do you have for me? What is this? What's going on? And that's what I mean by all is allowed. It's perfectly okay that tragedy could strike here, that something bad could happen, because that would also be something that's happening. So all is allowed means that we're not trying to take positive thoughts and have more, good thoughts and have less bad thoughts. We're not trying to have more good events in life and less bad ones, because the labeling of those events is just thoughts. Some bad things for some people are great for others. So I will sometimes sort of do this hand motion like as an energetic trying to express this, but it's just the allowance of all things happening, of everything happening the way that it should. And here, that is freedom, because it's going to anyway. You can say you can either you can think that you're choosing to allow, or you're welcome to kick and scream and not allow things to happen. They're all not really you doing it. It's not a choice being made. It's just sort of a happening. But allowing everything to be as it is just sort of it ends up being kind of the default setting. It's also asking, can you allow everything to be as it is? Can you welcome things as they arise? I suppose one could see that as a call to action for the mind. Can you just allow things to be as they are? But that's when I say that everything is allowed. It's no with no judgment, good, bad, or the other. And if judgment happens, that's okay too. Hey Noel, and Naiad08. Hey Noel, does self-consciousness still arise? I guess not, since there is no self. That's a great question. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I wore a nice shirt today. Tim Kliss wore a sweet shirt, so I felt like I needed to up the ante on the fashion. But that just ends up being a self-consciousness ends up being a story. So it's not that it goes away. It's not that it doesn't exist anymore. It's just completely allowed. And so their self-consciousness is there's a pattern of behavior there that I suppose could just keep running, even though it doesn't have the same stickiness. I think I'm doing okay so far, but I could say something really fucking stupid in a little bit, and that would be okay. I'm not going to have Emerson cut it out. Well, it's live anyway, but I'm not going to have Emerson cut it out because it's just happening. It's okay. But it's, yeah. All right. Let's see if I see someone checking in to ask a question. Let's see. I'm going to let Adam onto the screen. Ashwin, are you there?
Oh yeah, hi. Actually, I thought that the live stream on YouTube is going on at the same time, and I thought like I just have to come to this link to ask you a question.
Well, since you're here, why don't you ask?
Yeah, sure. So I just actually saw a few minutes of your live stream. So I don't know if this question has been covered before, but the question is just generally, that like I've been into spirituality and non-duality for a long time. It feels like it must have been at least like around 8 to 10 years, and I feel like I know all the concepts and all the techniques or whatever, everything related to spirituality and to enlightenment. I know everything about that, but just somehow in the end, like the so-called breakthrough or the awakening or whatever you want to call it, that just hasn't happened yet. I know everything about like allow everything to be as it is, and that should be everything, and like 100% allowing. I know all of that, but like it's just that like I just still know it intellectually even after so many years, and nothing's really happening, so I feel very stuck.
And that feels problematic.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, because yeah, it is problematic because the suffering in my life or whatever, it's still continuing, and the main reason that I'm pursuing non-duality or spirituality is because I want to get rid of that suffering. So the suffering is still there, but like yeah, that's it. Basically, the suffering is there, so that's a problem.
Yeah. So have you heard people say that the suffering isn't the problem, the wanting it to not be there anymore is what's actually causing the suffering?
Yeah, I've heard that too, but isn't like that feeling of uh, wanting the suffering to not be there also an intrinsic part of that suffering? So like for example, if somebody pinches you really really hard on your hand, or like if you're really feeling cold, so it's not like I'm actively judging that as a suffering thing or a negative thing. It's actually just, it feels like it's intrinsically part of the thing, like the cold feeling or the hurt feeling or whatever. So I'm not really pushing that suffering away. It feels like it's just automatically happening to me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, Ashwin. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think this is a common. I think this is a common thing. I'm suffering, and I want to stop. And I feel like if I figure this out, then it will stop. And I'm on the last thing, asking about, everything is allowed. Here, that includes suffering, and trauma has happened here. Big loss has happened here. But there's an acceptance of loss and suffering as a part of being this character, being lucky enough to get to see what this is all as this character, as a human.
Yeah.
And Ashwin, I don't know that something that I'm going to say right now is going to remove that for you. Some will say, well, who is it that suffers? Find the one who suffers. Find the one who wants suffering to stop. Ashwin, I wish you peace.
Yeah. Can you hear me though?
Yes,
Hello?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So about the thing you just said, find the one who wants the suffering to stop. I mean, I've tried doing that whole self-inquiry thing in which you sit down silently and you just try to find out who you are or what that ego is. But I mean, I know I haven't been able to find that structure or whatever, which is wanting the suffering to end. But it's it's just that that's all I can understand from it, that I'm not able to find it. But that doesn't really uh, put me in that realization that, oh, I actually don't exist, supposedly
Mm-hmm.
what's supposed to happen. So it doesn't really push me into that direct feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an intellectual thing. I mean, I can see that I can't find this person who wants to stop suffering directly, but doesn't really register completely that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I don't actually exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that the allowing everything to be as it is. There's
Yeah.
that word in there, everything. Allowing everything to be as it is, that includes suffering.
Yes.
So can you allow the suffering to be?
Well, it's like sometimes I can, when the suffering is not that bad, but when it's really horrible and I'm just feeling like shit completely, I find that I'm not able to allow that suffering. Something in me is just fighting it, saying that this is not how you're supposed to be feeling, or something, something like that.
Thoughts arising, labeling the suffering as should or shouldn't be.
Yeah, but that, I'm just saying that right now. Actually, in that moment when I'm really experiencing that, I don't think I'm even clearly experiencing those thoughts. It's just like everything is very hazy and like very, like everything feels really bad. That's all I know in that state. And no matter how hard I try to allow it or whatever, it just doesn't happen. I mean, because I know that eventually I'm looking for it to stop. So I can say it's not working in quotes because like it's not stopped yet. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it goes around and around in a loop. The expectation that it should stop and that things will be better when it does.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. I don't have the answers to this.
Right. Yeah, that's that's okay. I mean, yeah, I just had that question.
All right.
So
Well, thank you for being on. I appreciate it.
yeah, thank you so much, Noel.
Okay. Okay. So Earl Gibbs, the resistance to life being simply the. Maybe I should just take a second and comment on that a little bit. Suffering happens, and because just because it's said suffering doesn't happen to anyone, it doesn't make it seem less real. It doesn't make it less sucky when it's taking place. You hurt yourself if there's loss, if there's trauma. I see a question about trauma. I'll answer here in a second. Doesn't make it feel less real. Doesn't make it go away. You can't go into a funeral in the middle of a funeral and tell everyone you don't need to cry because the person didn't exist and neither do you. You can try that and see how it goes over, but it's not going to go very well. When suffering has happened here, or pain or loss, sitting with it, allowing it to be, feels as if that's the only path to what I'll call freedom from it, because the resistance to it sustains it. It keeps it going. It gives the mind what it wants to keep things going. And I know that it sounds like I'm saying that the mind is the enemy, and it's not. I said it before, the mind isn't. It's not an enemy, but it's just a horrible consultant. It's really, really bad. It just consistently thinks of work for it to do and reasons why you should keep it around. But it's the mind that wants the suffering to stop. Thank you, Ashwin. So Earl Gibbs, the resistance to life being simply the immediacy of what is without any intent is the apparent self-imposed veil that covers the total lightness and infinite freedom that this mystery is. That is well said, sir. This is all just happening, and then this veil, this illusory veil covered in programming and thoughts, clouds. I even hate to, I'm gonna trip over my own words. I even say like true seeing, but this understanding, and it's not to say that those thoughts are that they're bad. The mind is not bad. That they're not doing something. But the example I gave earlier, walking and brushing your teeth, the fact that you don't remember that you weren't mindful when that action happened, is you were just doing it. But it was that veil. It was the mind busy chewing on another bone while the body just did what it does, hopefully for everyone, every morning and night. That's a great point. Thank you for that. BP4722, do old traumas and old conditions, I'll phrase it, still arise? Yeah, some conditioning happens, and there was trauma here, major loss with my family, and some people have heard this story, but losing a baby, and that comes up a lot. You know, I think I probably think about it every day if a thought arises about him, and that's okay. It's perfectly fine. Most of the time now, the thought isn't necessarily associated with gratitude for the time that we had, for the true experience of all of it. And to some that may sound horrific, that there's gratitude for an event that happened where there was such great loss, but there is. So yeah, it still happens. And there's no expectation that any of those things should change, that conditioning should change. Yeah, I'd say there may be different behaviors on the outside for people that have known Noel, known this character forever. I imagine if they were watching any of these things, they'd be like, oh, he's just speaking positively or whatever. But there's a different viewpoint on it. Try and just have happy thoughts. Yeah, I know. Work on that for a while and see how it goes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick. NIDOA. And by the way, Noel, your mic doesn't sound too good. Oh, is that still the case? Sorry. Yeah, I'm plugged in. Hopefully it's okay. Might be the connection. Okay, so I'm just seeing if I'm getting messages about my mic sucking. What role does surrender play in awakening? That's from Lance Bell Jr. None, really. Telling people surrender, suffer. I think that those are commands for the mind. Some might disagree. They might say, "Oh yeah, well if you consistently surrender," and again, that word can be, you can use a different word. But I watched a video, an Adyashanti video, where he said surrender or suffer, and it wasn't really. I could make it more dramatic, but it wasn't. But that night, I just went to bed, and every breath I said, "I surrender, I surrender, I surrender," and I felt peace. I don't know that has anything to do with awakening, but I felt peace and I slept well that particular night. The page number 1, there's no control, so nothing can be done to recognize this. It just becomes apparent for some people. Okay, let's see. Wally D, yes, I can on Twitch. There's no control, so nothing can be done to recognize this. It just becomes apparent for some people. Yeah, I mean, you can. There's science if you want. You can look at science if that's the proof that one needs. There's research that's been done for, I think, since the 80s in Germany. They did, that shows that we don't have control of our thoughts. I think Stephen Walensky and I would love Stephen Walensky. I know he's not talking anymore, but I would watch all his stuff if he still was. Where he mentioned where they were, tickling parts of the brain, and then someone would raise their hand and they'd say, why'd you raise your hand? And then the person would be like, oh, they would just come up with something. And it wasn't that they were lying, but they just couldn't, figure it out. So they were testing all these different things, and they've been now able to test in science to show that they can figure out when you're going to push a button and which side and what it is up to a minute in advance before you do. So you can look to science and see, if that's useful. But I'd argue that that's just a logical thing. So you go, oh well, science says so, but I still feel in control, and I'm going to stick to that. So it doesn't necessarily help. But to answer your question, there's nothing that can be done to recognize it in this apparent experience. I don't think so. Although I think I did a video about, I did like a nothing's in control thing, and I seen whatever that video was, I seemed to convince people that if they did a certain thing, it was like picture a spoon, now picture a fork. I can't remember what I did, but you can play around with it if you want, but there's no prescription that can be given to recognize that. Kind Freedom asks, can you explain confusion and fear? And then I want to get to, I have a couple of other questions on the left side here. Can you explain confusion and fear? I don't know about confusion other than, you know, what we all, how we all seem to experience it, not what's going on. But if you're talking about how they're related together, yeah, confusion can sometimes feel as if there's a lack of control, and a lack of control, then fear gets created. Fear can happen when there's a feeling of lack of control. And confusion can also lead to anger for the same reason. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't have the specific answers to that, except that confusion's okay and fear's okay. So if Nick is a compulsive gambler, this is from Nick Gavin, compulsive gambler, smoker, and keeps doing that, do you think it's just something awareness just witnesses, or does awareness on certain things have any influence over Nick? So there is no separate Nick that awareness has control over. Nick is awareness. Noel is awareness. There's no separation between even Noel and Nick and awareness. It's not this puppet master situation that's happening. And I know this can be sticky in non-dual therapy when people are talking about addiction. And if there are addictions, then I would recommend Paul Hederman and also Scott Killaby. There's others, but Paul Hederman speaks about addiction in this. So I'm not too qualified to speak, you know, say that there's no Nick, there's no puppet that is Nick. It's not that the divine or God or the absolute is working through Nick, or as it's more that Nick is the divine. It's all this, what non-dual means. It's all one thing. There's no separate Nick and there's no separate Noel. Bex 101 says, you can't know it. And I don't know who you're talking to, Bex 101, but that is true. Can't know anything. Walter Driscoll, seeking continues for human beings, and even if it's so-called spiritual seeking, a body's nature is to seek for pleasure. Okay. Howard Chance, do you have a physical brain that exists in time and space? Does knowledge exist? Howard, I think you asked this yesterday. This is all an illusion. This idea, this construct of time and space. To have a physical brain. To have a physical brain. Does knowledge exist? I have no idea. I have no idea if knowledge exists. One could say, well, apparently it exists because we're talking about it. So it exists in that construct. If we're trying to go deeper than that, then you're going to lose me because I'm not all that interested in philosophical conversations. But just like time exists because we all agree, time doesn't exist, but it appears to exist because we all agree upon it. Maybe knowledge exists in that same way. Yeah, but that's just the way it is then. So not allowing is what is. There's no freedom there, no change from the dream. Yeah, so I use the word freedom because I like that word, but it's not really freedom from something or freedom, you know. And again, any talking that we're doing is dualistic because there's a subject-object relationship to the things that we're discussing. So when I use freedom, it's not the opposite of, the opposite of freedom is bondage or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, just the way it is, and not allowing is what is as well. And that's the thing, is you can actually this is why so much of the time if I talk about this, I'm like, you are free to do, you're free to accept what's being said or not. You're free to make these apparent changes or not. Um, you're free to surrender or not, because that's all what is. It's all what is as well. Freaking beautiful. It's so amazing. It's all this. It's all this. There's no other way that it can be. There's no other thing that this cannot be. It has to just be this because it is. And so that means resistance. That means loops of patterns. That means suffering. It means trauma. It means joy, happiness, all of it. It's all this. There's nothing else that it can be. There are no containers on the infinite. There's nothing that it can be in or hold inside of it. Hence the term the infinite. What you resist persists. Kind freedom. Seeking equals suffering. Fall in love with suffering. Maybe thoughts. Yeah, what you resist persists. That seems to be a nice phrase in self-help and motivation, things like that. Barbara Scott. Hi, Barbara. Catatonic awareness. I love it. Thanks for your time with us today, Noel. Barbara, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. All right, I have to go to the flip side really quickly. It's possible. Okay, G asks, I know that I'm awareness, but if I try to stay with that witnessing position, then it is impossible to make decisions on the level of the mind. And even when I do make decisions on the level of the mind, then I feel identified with the mind. I feel like I'm the doer. When is it deemed okay to take the absolute point of view instead of the relative? Or rather, how do you know when to switch between the personal and impersonal without falling into the trap of neo-Advaita? Just some sort of middle ground that you can achieve. Wow, I can see why that question arises. But all of those, all those questions and any answer to them are just giving the mind what it needs, which are things that need to be done or considered or changed or improved upon or conquered. So I know that I'm awareness, but then I have to stay in that witnessing position. I know that I'm awareness, but I want to be, but how do I sustain the I know that I am? It's like that saying everything after the but negates what you said before it. It's not about sustaining that point of view. And there isn't I'm going to use the word freedom again. Fuck it. I can use the word freedom. The word freedom. Freedom is not needing to make a distinction between the personal and the impersonal with a trap. The trap is the feeling that something can be personal versus impersonal. It's not like that. There is no, well, now I'm being the character of Noel, and now and when that's done, then this non-Noel awareness will exist or happen or whatever. And that without falling into the trap of neo-Advaita, there's no judgment here towards any form of non-duality, any religion, anything. Someone says I'm going to go to heaven. I read the Bible 10 times a day. I'm like, thumbs up, no judgment. Literally zero judgment. Neo-Advaita, or maybe whatever they're labeling it as. Some of us we call it non-concession. In terms of how they speak about it. That seems to work well for some people. It seems to resonate with some people, and others don't like it. Others they say, well, it just sort of, it negates life. It's nihilistic, and it's just more judgment. That's more thoughts arising, labeling something as good or bad or better or worse. Good or bad, better or worse. Like preferences are okay if it feels good. Someone's saying something and it feels good the way they're saying it, and you feel like listening to more, reading more, then do that. But here it is. The feeling that if I behave one way and not another, I'm going to fall into a trap is the trap. That is the trap. if I do this and not this other thing, then I might fall into a trap. That's the trap. You can't do any of it incorrectly. Everything that you're doing, every step you take, every next move that you make is the right move. Always. It's always been that way. And anything that says otherwise is just a thought arising full of shit, not true, that we believe. Stop believing the thoughts that are arising. Stop giving them any weight. And there might be thoughts like, well, they're important. I use my mind for creativity. But stop trusting all thoughts of the mind for a while. I saw a Muji quote that said, the mind is not your friend, not yet. And I was like, yes, that is right. Until you know when the mind is your friend, it's not. So don't believe it. Or do. See, that's what ends up happening. I'm like, don't believe it, but I don't want to tell anybody what to do because you can do whatever you want. You're going to anyway, no matter what is said, no matter what is written. Man, I got going there for a second. No one. Should the instruction be, see how everything is already allowed to be as it is, rather than try to allow everything to be as it is? The trying part feels impossible for me. So you want to throw some Yoda on this? You know, there is no try, only do. Yeah, sure. If that's helpful, okay. Yeah, see how everything is already allowed to be as it is. They're all, you know, it's a little bit of it's just different ways of phrasing some command for the mind, but that I like that. In the same way that even though I gave the example of saying I surrender, I surrender, I surrender, there's just a preference here for allowing, for the word allowing or welcoming. It just feels more gentle. But some people need their cage clocked with surrender. They need to be shaken up a little bit, so that seems to work better for them. The mic is not that bad. I was just wondering if you had set on your headphone mic. Oh, okay. Thanks. Niad08. Hi all. Hi, I am. Glenn J. I heard it is said that suffering has a purpose. This is to awake the mind up in order to undo the guilty self-concept from the apparent separation. So when suffering happens, this is the tool to see. That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. There are, I don't know anything about this. There's no interest to look at it, but it feels instinctively that there are these, I'll call them, in the States, they call them breaker switches, because you'll hear these traumatic experiences, you hear experiences of great suffering that then lead to, it's as if the breaker switch happens and it's like something is, no, you know, and sort of snaps you into, it creates some sort of clarity or a glimpse in that. And I spoke earlier about that trauma, and that ended up being a glimpse here. But I don't know. I don't know. This whole thing, it really is a mystery. So we can look at patterns and behavior and stories that are told about certain things. Like I had this immense suffering, and then there was this amazing peace, and psychologists will put their spin on it, and philosophers will put their spin on it, and they'll do whatever. But I like that. That to me, there's an instinctive energy that feels good, like this. This idea of the default setting of this cosmic hide and seek is that we're lost, and that at some point the consciousness, in order to know itself, forgets itself, these energetic contractions of us, and then it finds itself again. Okay, wait, I gotta go to one side, and then we'll get to I am. Okay, Michael asks, for a couple days now, I've been having trouble differentiating thought from that which is aware. And while this seems like a rather simple problem to resolve, mental chatter continues to obscure my perception by creating convincing dialogue that makes me feel as if I am thought. The mind uses different reasoning to support the claim that thought is not only aware, but self-aware. thought has the ability to know what is occurring in perception and sensations and in thought, therefore meaning it is aware of perception, sensations, and its self-thought. Even when I refer to times when thought seems to be absent, I am also met with the idea that thought must have been present during that apparent absence, because there's no way I could have been able to recollect any prior moment without a reference to thought. So this is a lot of words about thoughts, and the things that they do or don't do, and how some are. It appears that sometimes they're useful, sometimes they're not. The thoughts are just arising, happening. And differentiating one, like trying to differentiate a thought from what is aware, is a thought. Like, oh, that's a thought. This is awareness. Those are both thoughts. So it's effectively, if there's a description about it, or there is some sort of description or labeling of it, they're all thoughts arising. So, just like you have a thought and then you label it as a good thought or a bad thought, that's another thought. I'm gonna stop saying thought. Chatter will continue. Just be okay with that. Or can you? I mean, maybe it sucks. Maybe the mental chatter sucks and you don't want to be okay with it. I'm not telling you, I hope you're not thinking that I'm telling you what you should or should not do. But so I'll just describe. The thoughts don't stop. They're not believed. They're not loud. It just ends up being a noise. I live in Costa Rica, and when you live in Costa Rica, where we live, there's two things that you get used to. You get used to hearing weed whackers. Well, besides animals, besides that stuff, which is great, but the stuff that might be not considered not pleasant is weed whackers and air brakes on trucks. Weed whackers happen. Air brakes on trucks happen. So does thoughts. But you just get used to the sound of a weed whacker, and I've just gotten used to thoughts. But there's no identification of that's a good thought, that's a bad thought. I should have one more of those. I should have more of those, and I should have less of those. So the mental chatter, again, using this sort of spiral down, like the mental chatter seems to get quieter, seems to create less noise in the day-to-day. Okay, so I got one more from Garrett. Recently, I discovered that the now is all that there is. Nice one, which should be a liberating realization. Yeah, but here's the yeah, but. However, to arrive at that discovery, I had to make the apparent recognition that memories of the past are simply thoughts happening now. Okay? My question is, if memories are simply thoughts appearing in the now, are these memories false? If there is no past, what knowledge do I have of myself 5 years ago, 5 months ago, or 5 minutes ago? Even my memory of myself writing this email, did it ever happen, or is it simply a false thought conjured by the mind? The memories are false because everything is. This is all an illusion. But the memories that you're having of something you're having now, I'm not saying that they don't feel real. But the question almost has this feeling of like, so should I not believe the memories that I have? Should I just, that's the whole, walking around the world like this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. Memories are thoughts that arise about something. Period. So they come and go. They can feel real. It doesn't mean that the thing didn't happen, that the events didn't happen, but they're just all part of this illusion. No events happen to a separate Garrett. There's no Garrett that is having memories, having these thoughts 5 years ago, 5 months ago. More thoughts, questions. Okay, I am. Do the thoughts ever slow down, or do they just always run wild, even after you are able to recognize and watch them? I mean, it's, it does whatever. Sometimes they seem to be racing. Sometimes it's very quiet. But I've said in the past, like, the mind is kind of, you can think of it almost like a noisy roommate who happens to be a relative that pays for everything. Kind of just allow it to be. And sometimes they're racing, and sometimes they're not. But there isn't really a distinction made. Oh, there's lots of fast thoughts happening, because the belief that they're actually useful. That thoughts are useful because creativity has to happen, decisions need to get made, but the decision just gets made one way or the other. Kamal Kumar, could you please explain how everything is one? Nope, I can't explain how everything is one. I mean, you might as well ask, like, can I explain why everything is one? It's a loaded question. Even saying everything is allowed implies that there's a bunch of things that are together, that come together, but they're allowed because that's just that. They're allowed because they just are. They're just part of the one thing. Come on, I bet you give me a C- on that answer. Wally D4, sorry, that was the question. Do you think that seeking for pleasure and avoiding pain never really stops? I don't know. It's a tough one, because I feel like who's seeking? Who's seeking the pleasure? Who's seeking the pain? Who is it that is stopping or not stopping it? Pleasure seeking happens. Avoiding pain happens. So does it ever stop? I don't think it ever stops. It just continues, because that's just part of what happens. It's part of what is. Okay, so Nick is amazing. I think the worry of other characters' judgments based on my actions is what keeps the knowing of full allowance hard to do. I'm present right now, sitting with awareness. That's awesome, Nick. Thank you. Kevin Martin, freedom from thoughts, true creativity appears. You know what? Good call. Like, they call it a flow state. I think it's funny. I was watching Women's World Cup. I don't know how long ago it was, and they're asking, these goalies made these amazing saves, and they're asking the goalies, these reporters come up, what were you thinking? And it's like, you idiots, of course you have to ask. But they weren't thinking. They weren't thinking anything. There's no time for thought and a penalty kick. Like, they're just doing it. In sports and creativity, there's just beautiful expressions of no thought. I have a friend here who's a really good surfer, and he's a pretty serious guy. I mean, he jokes around, but he's a pretty serious guy. And surfing is hard. And every time that he's about to drop into a wave, he gets this huge grin on his face. It's the funniest thing. Everybody else is wincing and trying and doing other different things. Every time he's dropping into a wave, he gets this grin on his face. And people are like, man, that guy's always just smiling when he's on waves. And I'm like, yeah, because he's not thinking. The dude's so smart. He's just thinking about stuff, crap, all the time. And so when he's in that flow state of dropping into that wave, he's not thinking. So of course it's pure joy. Of course he loves doing it. Because he can't do anything else, excuse me, when he's dropping into the wave. There's no thought there. Thank you for sharing that, Kevin. I love that. Yeah, the true creativity appears when you're free from thoughts. Every move is correct. Nick, blessed to be aware of your presence in the moment. Noel, thank you, Nick, so much. Thank you for being here. Okay, Kaylee Gazelle. There's nothing worse than watching friends suffer because they believe those unuseful thoughts. Kaylee, I totally agree. It's kind of tough. And people that consider themselves empaths, sensitive, it seems extra difficult for them because there's a and I possibly feel peace when I see so much suffering in the world. And I would take that back to, watching friends suffer because they believe in the unuseful thoughts. It's just, if you look at them and what it is they're doing, they're just consciousness, they're just awareness, interested, if you want to call it that, in that experience. Interested in the experience of, and I don't know, I'd talk about this much, but back to when our baby Dash died, the glimpse, the pop that happened was this thought over and over again, beyond saying, so this is what this feels like. So this is what this feels like. This recognition and awareness. And again, it's just a thought that arose. But so this is what it feels like to have an indescribable amount of sorrow, indescribable amount of sadness, to have the world completely just fall out, to have loss this strong. So this is what this feels like. And the reason I mentioned gratitude and beauty and even remembering it, it brings tears to my eyes, not from sadness, but because of that, is that this is what it feels like. And that it has applied to so many different things, that has applied to so many different apparent experiences. So this is what this feels like to have a 3-beer buzz riding a bike down a Costa Rican road, whatever. So this is what this feels like, that to feel that experience as, consciousness, consciousness, in order to know itself, forgets itself, and then it gets to experience the infinite, which it is in this regard. Okay. Nayad's trying to get me on some thanks for the C minus. Come on. All right, we're going logic here. You said that self-consciousness appears, but I've found that it can only appear if there's an illusion of there being a me here, which is the object for another separate me outside the body. Dude, I'm not going to disagree with anything that you said, because I don't know anything. I don't know. You asked, do you still feel self-conscious? And saying, maybe I could have checked my words a little bit more and said, the feeling of self-consciousness still happens. But, I don't think that non-duality speak is useful in any of this. I think it's hilarious, actually, that people are walking around. Nobody's doing this, which is why it doesn't exist, because that is completely useless. Like the energetic contraction that calls itself Noel is speaking with the energetic contraction that calls itself Naiad 08. So if it's a gotcha, you got me, but I don't care, because it doesn't matter. The feeling of self-consciousness can still arise, just like the feeling of playing the character of Noel can also arises. There's no judgment. There's no call. There's no, oh, this particular thing happened, so now now I'm in this place and I wasn't before. But if we're using that same sort of logic, you said the self-consciousness appears, but I found, who found it? You found You found that it can only appear if there's an illusion of self. Who's the you that found anything? Like, I'm not attacking you, by the way. I love stuff like this. I don't really like philosophical debates on it, but you can't say anything incorrect about this. And so if you're listening to anyone talking about this and you're looking for gaps in the things that they're saying, if you're looking for contradictions, dude, get out your clipboard, because you're gonna find them all over the place with all speakers, with all authors. Nisargadatta Maharaj had a guru. He talked about him. He had a guru. He said that. But we don't need to say, well, he's talking about a guru. He's talking about a separate person. Just because we know this is an illusion, just because we know that it's a game, doesn't mean that we don't play in it anymore. It doesn't mean that we don't continue to live our lives. I like playing the character of Noel. I don't want to go live in a cave. There's no interest in that. If we were also to just go live in caves, I think there'd be a lot more of them in the world. So we can take whatever this is. I don't even want to call it knowledge, a message, teaching, whatever. It is what it is, whatever it is. And then we can play. We had Giselle Suarez on last week, and she calls them sandboxes, and I love that. She's like, she's doing hypnosis now. She's like, it's another sandbox. And I'm like, yes, dead on, of course. It's play. It's another thing to play in. So why would we negate any of it? Why would we try to prove otherwise? We can try. Dennis K, I guess you think non-duality represents a more true state than duality. Do you think it represents the ultimate truth? I don't think that it's a state at all, actually. I don't think it represents anything. I think that at best what it does is it describes and fails, because non-duality implies duality, which there's all, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, there's other people that talk about that stuff. But I don't think it represents anything. I think it's attempting to point to this, all that is. And I don't know what that means by, like, do I think that it's the ultimate truth? What I do like about it as a category, if you want to look at it, that is that I believe that it's open for revision. I believe that if something better comes along that describes what's going on around here, I'm open to it. I don't have any stamp or any stake on anything specifically. It's just a label. We can get stuck in the words of it. But do I think it's amazing to talk about? Do I think that does it light me up if someone starts a conversation and we talk about what is, and we're basically, this friend I was talking to earlier, we have coffee, and people are like, what do you guys do here? They see us and they go, well, what are you guys talking about? And we say nothing, and then we both laugh because we know that's what we're talking about, and they're like, oh, okay, but that's we literally are talking about nothing. We're talking about this glass of water, or how beautiful it is to just sit and be, how amazing it is that every day I apparently wake up in this body as this character. It's beautiful, and it's so ordinary and so plain. But I don't know if I would consider it the ultimate truth. I don't really know what that means. Hey, Jim, I can see you there. I'm going to pull you onto the screen. Jim, can you hear me? All right. Jim's gone. Thanks for showing up, Jim. Kaylee says, I just tell them, Wally, I appreciate you too. Thank you. I just tell them they can't do it wrong. Yeah, Kaylee, I do too. They can't. You can't do it wrong. You can't. Even the feeling like I did it, even the feeling I did it wrong is not wrong. Johnson Burnham, it feels like practice is like climbing down a ladder towards the abyss. I suppose it can feel like that. There's something about this that I find interesting, that I don't necessarily even think of this as spiritual, and I don't have any judgments towards people that do. I think it fits nicely into a category. But yeah, walking down a path, there's climbing down a ladder towards the abyss. Yeah, I mean, life in free fall, as some call it. But there's more. As you get further down the ladder, the rungs get further and further apart until you can't reach the next one. Oh man, I wish I would have read that whole thing at once. It feels like practicing on a spiritual path is like climbing down a ladder towards the abyss. As you get further down the ladder, the rungs get further apart until you can't reach the next one. Yep. Yeah, you end up with nothing. You end up with nothing to grab a hold, nothing to grab a hold of, nothing to grasp. The mind doesn't have anything to grab a hold of, and yet it will continue to try. Kamal, I'm tempted to skip your question since you gave me a C-, but we'll go for it. Kamal Kumar, isn't this what everyone already knows and overlooks, the most personal experience everyone has? Yes, that's why it can be so frustrating. People are, it was so frustrating to hear people go, it's just this, it's so simple, but it is. And I'm like, what's so simple? Tell me, if it's so simple, why can't you explain it? But, the overlooking, sometimes I guess interesting. Sometimes it's more interesting to not know about this. And the phrase "the head in the tiger's mouth," it's so true, because I've talked to people that are like, I tried to quit this shit. I tried to quit non-duality. I tried to stop this because it just felt exhausting. And I'm like, cool, good, take a break. I think that what everybody knows and already overlooks is why that story I shared earlier is so, I guess interesting. And what was so funny is that it's always been this. It's always been this way. Like, holy crap, and the mind would be like, why didn't we figure this out earlier? Like, you can do all these different things, but it was just like, it's always been this. It's always been right here, closer than close. How to let go at the end, from Jonathan Burnham. I don't know. I don't know how to let go at the end. I know there was a lot of fear. Okay. Yeah, said, no, it's not a gotcha moment, man. Okay, cool. No judgment. But so how to let go at the end? I felt that there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear at a point for about a week of like, okay, well, what if I don't care about family? What if I don't care about work? What if? And that was just the mind working. Just the mind, maybe knowing that it was soon to be out of a job and making its last final pleas for relevance. No, it's not a gotcha moment. Okay, all good. I don't mind. Any of the questions. I mean, if there's like about philosophy and stuff like that, it's not gonna be a thing. But yeah, I've had people. I'm not on social media as much, but I've had people. I posted something, and this guy was like, "This is complete and utter bullshit," and I'm like, "Dude, you're right. You're absolutely right. Isn't it great? Isn't it great that the words that are being spoken are complete crap?" And like, I don't know what position they held. I didn't get into it with them, but okay. It's the same as I'm gonna take these. I'm gonna participate in this practice, and then I'm gonna reach enlightenment. Okay, no judgment. You're gonna go to heaven. You're gonna be saved. You're gonna do this and make a better body. You're gonna get smarter. You're gonna make more money. Like, literally, just go. Yeah, do that. Go ahead. Conscious Cat Woman enjoying the talk. Thank you, Cat, or Conscious Cat Woman. Nick, I appreciate how down to earth the character Noel is, and giving character Nick a moment of reflection that there's no need, no wrong, no meaning beyond that character. Forever grateful. Bye for now. Thanks, Nick, for coming. Yeah, good. Jim, appreciating the honesty and lack of the non-dual speak BS. Sorry, my phone is weird, do weird things. The link shut down for me. No problem. Yeah, I don't. Yesterday on Tim's talk, someone asked about the non-dual police. I call them non-dualists, as in pew pew. It's just, that's more mental stuff. The physical or psychological hierarchy, or I know more than you, like, it's just not of interest here. And I will try, and if I'm having regular conversations with people and they will start in on the non-dual speak, I'll be like, just talk. You don't have, there's nothing to prove. You're not, I'm not, there's no judgment on what it is that's being said. You can say, I mean, I've been doing it this whole time. It's fine. All right. So, we're coming at the close here, but, I'll take a couple more questions. So Ashwin, asked, what's the main difference between you, enlightened, and me, non-enlightened, even though you said suffering still happens here and is allowed? There's no me here and you there. There's no enlightened being here. Noel is not enlightened. Noel's just some character. Noel could be a character that says, I'm enlightened, but that doesn't make any sense. That's just a story. That's just a character, a false character, thinking that they have, a false character thinking that they're separate and that they have something that you don't. Thank you, Kamal. Suffering, even though you said suffering still happens. Oh, sweet. I got upgraded to an A+ from Kamal. Thank you. Yeah, Ashwin, I think I understand the question that you have. I don't know the specific answer other than this idea of suffering is allowed to happen. It's allowed to come in, just like everything else. All other emotions, all events, all happenings, they're all allowed. Dennis K, thank you, Ashman. Dennis K says, you meditate and everything and everyone disappears, so a non-person created the universe. All right. Yeah, so I do meditate. I like it. I know that sometimes people, again, this is just like stuff, and you'll hear Nando, I was like, I used to meditate and I don't. I'm like, well, not meditating is meditation. This whole life is one big meditation, all the things that you're doing. I just happen to like sitting quietly for 25 minutes in the morning. You call it whatever you want. You call it sitting quietly. But sitting quietly is preferable to talking, even though I've done a damn good job of talking for almost 2 hours. So, okay, so I'm going to wrap this up with the Nisargadatta Maharaj quote that I saw. The consciousness in you and the consciousness in me, apparently two, really one, seek unity, and that is love. I like that. Thank you, Nisargadatta. What would you say the shift is? Is there even a shift or a falling away? Oh, Kaylee, thank you so much. Oh, that's so nice. Naya, oh wait, what would you say the shift is? Is there even a shift or a falling away of something, or no? I mean, it's just like it's just this apparent thing that happens, that then gets labeled as something by the mind. So some people would, would even say like, well, it's back to this non-duality talk kind of thing, but they'll say, well, no glimpses ever happened, no awakenings ever happened, no Kundalini experiences or whatever it is that you want to put on ever happened. And the answer is like, okay, yeah, that's right, but we're cruising around the world and you pay your bills, and that didn't happen either. And so we can have this mental warfare on things. But I would say the shift, if you want to look at that, is just, if we're talking about a glimpse, yeah, and go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong on this one. I'm sorry, I misread your other thing. But the shift is, it's not really a shift in anything other than maybe this apparent perspective of things. Kind of like when I was mentioning like oh yeah, like, and that could happen multiple times. That's what it is. Or, oh yeah, it's been this all along. I've heard the phrase falling away. I think, oh man, I'm forgetting his name. I've heard of falling away, like the person falls away. Like that feels like a good description. These are all just descriptions. They're all sort of pointers of, of what it is. But the falling away makes sense. It feels energetically like the right person, like the person just sort of is not there anymore in this instinctual or knowing sense, even though, you're still walking around, walking and talking and doing these things. Muhammad Kam Balach says, hello, I'm Pakistani. Thumbs up to you, mate. Leo the Lake, why don't you make videos anymore? I guess the only answer is apparently you don't want to. Leo, that's a good question. I got to a point where I feel like I've been doing this spiral thing. I feel like that's what the mind has been doing in terms of thoughts, but also talking about it and wanting to make noise about it. That also kind of went away, and it made way for some space and room to meet Emerson, Julie, Harry, Rod, all these other great folks that we did the Nothing Conference with in this project. And so the project ends up being a really good expression. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I'm glad to have done this. I really appreciate everyone, sticking with me and all of your questions. It's been great. I may make videos at some point in the future, and I may do another one of these again, but yeah, I guess the only answer is apparently you don't want to. It's just that time and space came up for something else. Yeah, thank you so much for your questions. So at this point, we usually will tell the speakers, talk about what you have going on and donation links and things like that. You don't need to donate to me. I would say donate to the other speakers. Check out their shows. You can go and you can donate to the Nothing Project on the page. This is doing this. I love it. It's absolutely amazing. I appreciate everyone asking their questions. And the only thing else I have going on is just helping to produce more and more talks like these. So I'll do my like and subscribe for more and hit that bell, whatever, or don't. I don't really care. But that's all. That's more of this. So thank you so much for being here. Okay, that's it for me today. Thanks everyone for all your time. We'll see you whenever we see you next. Okay, bye, Leo.